The invitation arrived on a Tuesday morning, cream-colored and elegant, with gold lettering that caught the light just right. I stood in my downtown apartment, looking out at the city skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows, holding the most absurd piece of paper I'd ever seen in my entire life. My best friend was getting married. And she wanted me to be her maid of honor. What she didn't know was that I already knew exactly who the groom was. My name is Emma Richardson, and this is the story of how my perfectly organized life fell apart like a house of cards in a windstorm, and how I decided to rebuild it in the most unexpected way possible. 6 months earlier, my life looked picture perfect from the outside. I was 32 years old, living in a beautiful apartment in the heart of the city with my husband of 5 years, David. We had met in college, fallen in love over late-night study sessions and too much coffee, and built what I thought was an unshakable life together. David worked as an architect at a prestigious firm downtown, designing the kinds of buildings that changed skylines. I worked as a marketing director for a tech company, the kind of job that kept me busy but fulfilled. And then there was my best friend, Sophie Chen. We'd known each other since we were 7 years old, when her family moved into the house next door to mine in the suburbs. We grew up together, sharing secrets, dreams, and everything in between. When I moved to the city for college, Sophie followed a year later. When I got married, Sophie was my maid of honor, crying happy tears as she helped me into my wedding dress. We were closer than sisters. We were each other's person. Or so I thought. The first sign that something was wrong came on a cold March evening. David had been working late more and more often, which wasn't unusual during big projects. But something felt different this time. He'd started wearing cologne again, something he'd stopped doing years ago. He'd bought new clothes. He smiled at his phone in ways that made my stomach twist into uncomfortable knots. I'm not proud of what I did next, but when you have a feeling that something is terribly wrong, sometimes you have to follow that feeling even when it leads you to dark places. One night, after David fell asleep, I carefully took his phone from the nightstand. My hands shook as I typed in his password, the same one he'd used for years, our anniversary date. The password didn't work. He changed it. My heart started beating so fast I thought it might burst right out of my chest. I sat there in the darkness, listening to David's steady breathing, feeling like the floor had disappeared beneath me. People don't change their passwords unless they have something to hide. The next few weeks were torture. I watched David like a detective in one of those crime shows, looking for clues, trying to piece together what was happening. He started going to the gym before work, something he'd never done before. He took phone calls in the other room. He seemed distant, like his mind was somewhere else even when his body was sitting right next to me on the couch. And Sophie. Sweet, loyal Sophie started acting strange too. She'd always been available for our weekly coffee dates, but suddenly she was busy. Too busy. When we did meet up, she seemed distracted, checking her phone constantly, smiling at texts from someone she never mentioned. She started dressing differently, wearing makeup more often, looking radiant in a way that made me wonder what was making her so happy. I never once connected the two mysteries. Not even for a second. That's how much I trusted them both. The truth came crashing down on a sunny April afternoon at our favorite coffee shop downtown, a little place called the Daily Grind tucked between two enormous glass office buildings. Sophie had finally agreed to meet me after canceling 3 times in a row. I was excited to see her, hopeful that maybe things would feel normal again, that maybe I was imagining all the weirdness. We ordered our usual drinks, vanilla latte for me, caramel macchiato for her, and found our favorite corner table by the window. Outside, the city buzzed with life. Taxis honked, people rushed by in business suits, street vendors sold hot dogs and pretzels. Inside, my world was about to explode. Sophie looked nervous. She kept stirring her coffee even though she hadn't added any sugar. Her eyes darted around the shop like she was making sure no one was listening. My stomach knotted up the way it does when you know bad news is coming but you don't know what it is yet. Emma, she said, her voice quiet and shaky. I need to tell you something. I've been keeping a secret, and it's eating me alive. Relief flooded through me. Finally, she was going to tell me what was going on. Maybe she was moving away. Maybe she was sick. Maybe she'd gotten a new job. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. You can tell me anything, I said. You know that. Sophie took a deep breath, and when she looked up at me, her eyes were shining with tears. But they weren't sad tears. They were the kind of tears people get when they are overwhelmed with happiness. I'm in love, she said. I smiled, confused but happy for her. That's wonderful. Why didn't you tell me? Who is he? That's the thing, Sophie continued, pulling her hand back and wrapping both hands around her coffee cup like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. It's been complicated. We've been seeing each other for about 6 months, but we had to keep it secret because of circumstances. 6 months. The same amount of time David had been acting strange. A cold feeling started creeping up my spine, but I pushed it away. No. It couldn't be. We are getting married, Sophie said, and now the tears were streaming down her face. Can you believe it? Me, getting married. I never thought I'd find someone who understood me so completely, who made me feel so alive. Emma, I've never been this happy in my entire life. That's amazing, I managed to say, though my voice sounded strange even to my own ears. When do I get to meet this mysterious man? Sophie bit her lip. Soon. I promise. I'm going to tell everyone soon. I just wanted you to be the first to know because you're my best friend and you mean everything to me. We talked for another hour, Sophie gushing about her secret boyfriend, carefully avoiding any details that might identify him. She talked about how he was smart and successful, how he understood her dreams, how they'd started as friends and it had grown into something more. Every word she said made that cold feeling spread further through my body, but I kept telling myself I was being paranoid. The city had millions of people. The odds were impossible. When we left the coffee shop, Sophie hugged me tight. Thank you for being happy for me, she whispered. This means the world. I hugged her back, breathing in her familiar perfume, feeling like I was hugging a stranger. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed next to David, listening to him breathe, studying his face in the dim light coming through the curtains. Was he really capable of this? Was I losing my mind? I needed proof. I needed to know for sure. The next morning, David left for work early as usual. As soon as the door clicked shut, I was out of bed and tearing through our apartment like a woman possessed. I checked his dresser drawers, his closet, his laptop, everywhere I could think of. I found nothing. He'd been careful. But everyone makes mistakes. I was sitting at his desk, my head in my hands, when I noticed something. His laptop was charging, the power cord plugged into the wall. David always unplugged everything before he left. He was obsessive about it, always worried about wasting electricity or starting fires. But today, in his rush, he'd forgotten. My fingers trembled as I opened the laptop. It was still on, just asleep. The screen lit up, and there, right in front of me, was his email inbox. He'd forgotten to log out. I didn't even have to search. The evidence was right there at the top of his inbox. Emails from Sophie. Dozens of them. I clicked on the most recent one, dated just yesterday. Can't wait to see you tonight, my love. Only 5 more hours. These secret meetings are getting harder and harder. I want to tell Emma so badly, but I know we need to wait. Soon everyone will know. Soon we can stop hiding. I love you more than words can say. Forever yours, S. The room started spinning. I gripped the edge of the desk, trying to breathe, trying to make sense of what I was reading. This couldn't be real. This had to be some kind of horrible nightmare. But it wasn't a nightmare. It was real. It was all sickeningly, devastatingly real. I spent the rest of the day reading through their emails. 6 months worth of love letters, secret meetings, plans for their future. They'd met for coffee while I was at work. They'd had lunch in restaurants across town where no one would recognize them. They'd even gone on a weekend trip together, while David told me he was at a work conference and Sophie told me she was visiting her parents. The worst part wasn't the betrayal, though that felt like someone had reached into my chest and ripped out my heart. The worst part was reading how much they loved each other. How they called each other soulmates. How David wrote to Sophie about things he'd never shared with me, dreams and fears and hopes for the future. How Sophie wrote about feeling truly understood for the first time in her life. I was the obstacle. I was the complication. I was the wife who had to be dealt with carefully so that their perfect love story could have its happy ending. Most people, when they discover their husband is having an affair with their best friend, would confront them immediately. They'd scream, cry, throw things, kick the cheating husband out, cut off the backstabbing best friend forever. That's the normal response. That's what anyone would expect. But I didn't do that. I sat in that apartment all day, staring out at the city, thinking about my options. And slowly, a plan began to form in my mind. A plan that was probably crazy, possibly brilliant, and definitely risky. If I confronted them now, they'd find a way to make this work. They'd paint me as the bitter ex-wife. They'd probably feel terrible for a while, but eventually they'd get over it and live happily ever after, their love story made even stronger by the obstacles they'd overcome. But if I waited, if I let this play out, maybe I could control the narrative. Maybe I could make sure they understood exactly what they'd done. Maybe I could make sure there were consequences. I know it sounds twisted. Maybe it was. But in that moment, sitting in the ruins of my life, I needed to feel like I had some power. Some control. Some way to make sense of the senseless. When David came home that night, I acted completely normal. I asked about his day. I made dinner. I smiled and laughed at his jokes like nothing was wrong. It was the hardest performance of my life, but I pulled it off. Over the next few weeks, I became an actress in my own life. I kept meeting Sophie for coffee, listening to her gush about her secret boyfriend. I kept sleeping next to David every night, pretending I didn't know where he'd really been when he said he was working late. I started seeing a lawyer in secret, preparing divorce papers, making sure I understood my options. And I waited. 2 months after I discovered the truth, Sophie called me, her voice bubbling with excitement. Emma, can you meet me for lunch today? I have the most amazing news. We met at a trendy restaurant in the theater district, all exposed brick and Edison bulbs. Sophie was practically glowing when she walked in. She hugged me, and I hugged her back, marveling at how easy it had become to pretend. So, Sophie said, barely able to contain herself as we sat down. I'm getting married. Oh my gosh. I said, putting on my shocked and excited face. That's incredible. Tell me everything. The wedding is in 6 weeks, Sophie rushed on. I know it's fast, but we don't want to wait anymore. We've been hiding for so long, and we're just ready to start our lives together officially. Emma, I want you to be my maid of honor. Would you? Please. This was it. The moment I'd been waiting for. I could have said no. I could have stood up, told her I knew everything, and walked away. But that would have been too easy. Too simple. Of course, I said, reaching across the table to squeeze her hands. I'd be honored. Sophie started crying again. Thank you, thank you. You're the best friend anyone could ever ask for. I can't wait for you to meet him. You're going to love him, Emma. I know you are. I'm sure I will, I said, and it wasn't even a lie. I had loved him once. I'd married him. I'd built a life with him. There's something else, Sophie said, biting her lip. This is kind of awkward, but I need to ask you a favor. David can't come to the wedding. My heart stopped. What? Why not? It's complicated, Sophie said quickly. There's some history between my fiancé and David. They used to work together, and things ended badly. There was a big fight about a project, and they haven't spoken in years. My fiancé doesn't even know that David is your husband, and I'm worried if he finds out, it'll cause problems. Can you come without him? I know it's a lot to ask, but it would mean everything to me. I wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it all. Of course David couldn't come to the wedding. He was the groom. That's fine, I said. David's been really busy with work anyway. I'm sure he won't mind. Sophie looked relieved. Thank you for understanding. You're amazing, Emma. Truly.